Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I want to wish you all a wonderful holiday. I hope it was beautiful wherever you are and whatever you have been doing and how you've been celebrating and just enjoying every minute of every day and every moment. So, thank you for being here. I know your time is very precious, and we're glad that you have chosen to spend that precious time with us. And today we're really excited because we have one of our favorite guests back on. And I'm going to say hello to her in a minute. But before I do, I want to introduce everyone to Amnon, who is taking care of all the technology, running the board, running the sound, running me. Hi.
Hello.
How
I
are
just
you?
want to tell everybody that if you want to see a nice and clear picture, you need to click on Bamboozer under the video.
Okay.
Don't use the other ones. There are problems with them.
So if there's a problem, they click on
That
Bamboo.
I said it already.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, here we go. So, for those of you who may not have tuned into us before, I want you to know that you can take part in our chat. If you look to the right of the big window where you're seeing the video of me at this point, you can just put your name in there and join our chat. And there's conversations going on, and it's wonderful. You can ask questions and engage with other people in there. You are always welcome to call in at 919-518-9773. Or if you are somewhere in the world and you don't have a phone or you want to contact us on Skype, you can do that on computers, that's plural, 2K Voice. And we would love to have you join us at any point during the show. So if this is your first time, my guest has been on a couple of times and we love her. So you're coming in the middle of a love affair because we really do love Rachel. She's wonderful. And she's written a book before, All I Want to Do Is Listen. And one day I was doing some work on PR Log and came across somebody talking about listening. And my ears just perked up because I love anybody who talks about listening. Anybody. Any book they write, anything they say that has to do with listening, deep listening, opening up, really understanding and hearing each other is my passion. And this is Rachel's passion as well. So I'm going to introduce Rachel to you. Rachel Oz is a psychologist, author, and art playgroundist. And I'm going to ask her to describe that to everybody because that's fabulous. Who loves listening to the beauty in people. And she's one colorful lady. And let me introduce Rachel to you. Rachel, hey.
Hi there. Hi, Marilyn. Hi, everyone.
How are you, Rachel?
I'm really well, thank you.
Good.
How are you, Marilyn?
Rachel, I am doing great, thank you. I'm doing great. I love when Rachel comes on because, it's wonderful when you surround yourself with certainly like-minded people. And Rachel is so unique and so colorful and just, she lives her true self. And what more can you ask of yourself and all the people that you love around you is just to live their authentic self. And that's what Rachel does and brings out in me and everybody that listens and watches her. So we're really happy to have her. So what you been up to lately, Rachel?
What have I been up to?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, as you mentioned, I have the one book out, All I Did Was Listen, and I just had a second one come out called Diving In. So I've been doing adventures around these things in particular. And right now I am speaking to you out of my psychology office where I meet with clients for therapy. So I love this cozy little space here. And anyway, out of all of this, I'm saying hello to you all. It's so good to be here.
So your new book, Diving In.
Yes.
So what was the passion or the impetus behind that book?
Mm-hmm. The passion or impetus was my going swimming in a swimming pool near my home. So a few times a week I go swimming, and I found myself, maybe like a lot of people find themselves in nature, walking through the woods or by a body of water or so on, with a number of reflections. So I would be in the pool swimming and come out of it and be looking for a notepad, pen, and just to write down my reflections. Because what I was finding is that the experiences I was having underwater were metaphor for life. Even today, I was walking to the pool, and to walk to the pool, I'm walking through the locker room and shower area, and there was a woman in there showering, and she said to me, "Hey, just a heads up, there's a lot of testosterone in the pool today with fins, and they're making big waves with all their laps." And she said she noticed as she turned a lap and took in a big gulp of water. So she said, "Have fun riding the wave." And I chuckled because I had written a page kind of about that, thinking about how it's harder to swim when there's a lot of people in the water and making big waves. And then I remembered how in the ocean, how whales probably don't concern themselves with that kind of thing. And maybe I didn't need to either, that the water is big enough to hold all that's going on in it. And so this is just an example of our lives, right? And how sometimes there's a lot of big players or a lot of things going on in our lives, and to just recognize that I can get through that too, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a deterrent. It's just part of being in the water.
You know, that is so interesting. I had no idea that that's where this whole thing started. And yet, you know, I love to swim. And
you do?
Yes, I do. And last week was my first time back in the water in almost a year. Because,
Marilyn!
Yes, because I had broken my foot with my grandson, and I didn't break, but I damaged the nerves in my right arm because I was cocky and using paddles too often because I didn't know my limitations. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to him, thinking of how, you know, like the practice of yoga is about, you know, learning how far you can go and then plus going a little further. But in the water, I don't know if water's been given that kind of wisdom necessarily, but it was the first time and I loved it. But I can tell you, one of my biggest lessons occurred going into the water. You know, last year I went in one day and I got to the pool and it was packed. I mean, there wasn't a lane to be had. I mean, there was a bunch of kids doing, you know, swim meets and all kinds of stuff. And they told me I had to share a lane. Oh, I did not like that at all. Because I had this vision that I'm going to just run over somebody, right? I am going to just run over somebody, and I'm just not going to be able to, like, stay on my side. And I got mad because I, you know, felt insecure about it, but I had no choice. I had to get in the water, and I had to find, I sized up everybody in the lane to see who, you know, was, like, small enough that I could get in the water with. And I was hugging the rope, basically, because I was like, oh my God. And then it was like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because then I was like, you know, do I have to go at the same speed that they're going? Or can I go at my own speed? Does it matter how fast I'm going? Does any of that even matter? And it was it was one of my biggest lessons. And I got in the water and I swam with somebody, and then this person got out. And this big, big black guy got in with me. And I mean, he was built to the max. He was built. His arms, his legs, his body. And I'm thinking, he is going to splash me to kingdom come. And you know what? This was a riot. He didn't know how to swim. He was there for lessons. And I had made up all this stuff about this guy getting in the water with me, that he was this jock and he's going to just eat me for lunch. And it wasn't like that at all.
I mean, isn't this so right on? It's for whatever reason. It's that's your whole life, right? Like, not that we're going to have a therapy session right now, dearest Marilyn, but it's that sense of like, there's so many things you said that I'm sure is language in your life and in all of our lives probably, right?
Oh my God, yes. And we have those benchmarks. And to be able to use those benchmarks, to be able to remember those benchmarks throughout our entire life makes all the stuff we go through so worth it.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
And if we can be awake to all of that language the way you talked about being in the pool, you were just so awake to the language. And just being awake to our lives, and like you said, you like that word listening, but listening to the language that rises up out of us. And of course, when we're in the pool, it's one of those places where we are so bare. We certainly are bare in the locker room, but also in the pool. And I think a lot of women in particular struggle with things like, what swimsuit am I getting? Will I even allow my legs to be shown? And so on. But one thing that's been interesting with this book coming out is that water is so evocative for people. I've had people tell me anything from, I love the water, I feel like I'm more at home in there than on land, to someone telling me, I am so frightened of the water, I won't even take a shower.
Really?
So
Frightened of the water? Frightened of water in general?
Yeah,
Oh.
right. So some people, that was sort of the more, far end of the continuum of fear I've heard of water. And somewhere in between of just, I'm afraid of swimming, or, I'm uncomfortable going into an ocean, or different variations of fear. Which, I wrote this book more as a metaphor, that water was more about our lives, and the metaphor that comes forward, and the invitation to dive into your life and be awake and immersed in it. But I didn't necessarily see that coming, that just the fact that water is the metaphor can really bring up a lot for people.
That is very interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong, but in your first book, you did use some situations from some of your patients in your book, some of the things that you listened for, right?
Right.
So you did the same thing with this book as well? Is that how you...
No.
No? Okay.
This one had nothing to do directly with my my therapy clients. This one was simply my own experiences of being in the water, and sort of different reflections all pulled together that tell a little bit of a story, or as I ended up putting it, an invitation to the reader to do the same. And there's quite a vulnerability in doing that, of being that bare and open and listening and diving all the way into your life anyway. And having the faith to know that it's in these kind of waters that you're going to find you are the most beautiful, that when you're most fully awake, immersed, and honest. Yeah.
Yeah, because it is something that you're not on the ground, obviously. A couple of weeks ago, I had an artist on, Alexandra Bach. She was fabulous, and she does nudes. And I had met her and loved her work. And I said, this was a great topic to have on the show, because, it's one of those things that could be uncomfortable. It's a little dicey at times, and the way the world looks at certain things now, things come up as spam, even when you don't intend them to be. So I said, let's do a show on your work and talking about painting nudes and all of that. So she said yes. And the night before the show, I was starting to post some things. I had a very difficult time posting some of her art, because I started thinking about, well, what are people going to say and all this stuff. And then I had to get over that, because I have to get over that. That shouldn't be my stumbling block. But that is one of those things that when you get involved in something and you bare yourself, you become vulnerable.
Yes.
Or you are vulnerable.
Yes.
You have to be willing to take whatever is coming your direction and do something with it.
Right.
And do something with it.
Yes.
So I want to show the cover. Non, you have that. Okay, here we go. So this is your first book, right?
Actually, that was a header on my old blog.
Okay.
So it's not. It's the name of my first book.
The name of
all
your
I
first
did
book,
was the name of my first book.
Right.
I have, if you want it, and that's my new book, Diving In. And I do have my first book nearby. Look at all the
Tell us
different
about this
pieces.
one, Rachel. Tell us about, so Rachel does her this is her drawings. And tell everybody, you do your drawings based on what?
Okay, so my drawings come out of various places. So, and they certainly come out of listening. This one in particular that you're showing, called Just Being Me, is actually an individual print that I drew, but I also had it in my first book, All I Did Was Listen, and it's toward the end of the book, called Just Being Me, because it was something out of a, sort of paragraph that a client had said. And but my drawings really come out of wherever I just feel moved, whether it's something I hear a client, a friend, whoever say that takes my breath away a bit. I love to use those words and make a drawing around it. Because it's kind of my favorite thing when my breath is taken away, because it's just a sign that it hits some deep resonant part of my heart. And then if it goes there into that kind of resonance, typically we all share it. And so then I want to offer it back out to love other people up.
Okay, here we go to the next one. And I just want to remind anybody that's listening, remember, you can take part in our chat. Just sign your name and we'll see you there. Or if you don't want to do that, you just want to call in 919-518-9773 or connect with us on computers, 2K voice. You won't come in on video, you'll come in on voice. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your comments, what's coming up for you now while you listen to Rachel and myself and you see some of her artwork. Have you had any experiences lately diving in, as she puts it, as I put it, into the water or into life that you want to share with us? Because this is how we're going to, all of us, help each other move forward. And that's takes all of us to help each other, I think. So
right.
That's why our stories are so juicy. So tell us about this one.
That was an individual print that I drew one day when I was on the North Shore of Lake Superior in northern Minnesota. Just seeing all the beauty in nature and recognizing for myself how often I can breeze too quickly past things. And so I just felt like my soul was reminding me to linger a little longer in the beautiful things like a flower.
And when you say breathe too quickly, can you explain that a little bit more?
Breathe. That I breathe too quickly. I can breathe too quickly by things that are lovely. Like, there's a flower, and keep walking instead of just stopping and really looking at it for a moment and savoring it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's really very interesting, isn't it? Because even though we can be aware of the flower, if we don't take in the flower, it's like it's noticing the gift but not using the gift.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I remember Georgia O'Keeffe saying something like that, the artist, about that the longer she would look at a flower, the more she would see in it, which is so true, and which is, of course, ultimately true about ourselves, about each other, right? Like how much, sometimes in my practice, some people get scared or a little nervous about looking too closely at themselves, but sort of the secret is the longer you look, the more beauty you see,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's listening.
That's listening. Yeah.
That's listening.
Right.
Wonderful. So was there anything else you wanted to add to this slide?
Not to that print. It was kind of a simple, yeah. Oh, here's another one.
Not so simple, but simple.
Right.
All right. Now this one.
My job is to live it to the fullness of who I am. So another individual print, and I feel like for myself, certainly over the last few years, it's been my own living prayer, if you will, that I would just really live into sort of the fullest dream of who I am. And, I suppose it's a whole question about how do you listen for that? And for me, part of that is noticing where I feel especially joyful and allowing myself to participate in whatever that is. And sometimes that's a little nerve-wracking. So if it means walking up to someone that I feel drawn to, a stranger, and in some public place, and greeting them, and whatever it is I feel moved to say, that they are beautiful, or I wanted to just wish them some wonderful things today, to go ahead and do that, and to just allow that vulnerability to be there, and for myself to be there, and recognition of who they are to be there. But just going ahead and following where I feel drawn and alive. And that one thing opens up the next thing.
So not so much going where you're drawn even into the negative, but going where you're drawn into the positive.
Yeah.
Into the joy.
I think so, into the joy. And even if there's something pulling me in that's where there's some sadness and it keeps beckoning, I think that's important too, because there's things to learn there.
Right.
Which, of course, we could say way more about. But
right. And I think it's great to cover it all. So how do you listen for what you're drawn to?
Yeah, I think in the sadness realm, sometimes it's helpful to write those things down, what it is you're feeling sad about. And I think the only caution I have there is when it gets into what I call sort of a negative self-talk. So in that sadness, if there's some kind of thinking that is negative or judgmental, to kind of challenge that a little bit and think about where that's coming from, those negative voices, and challenge them with a loving voice, and try to find what is there that could be more affirming, encouraging, loving, compassionate. But also sometimes it's just good to feel sadness and to acknowledge what is real inside. And I think there's a great freedom of not having to fake it. So sometimes I try to just dig down for the authentic response. And not that I do that perfectly by any means. So sometimes I'll say something and I'll immediately say, no, wait, that's not quite right or real or true. Let me think about that a little bit more.
Let me dig down deeper.
Let me dig a little deeper.
But I think that's the perfect step. Is in getting to one level and going, yes, but that's not all of it yet. And then and let that be the step in to the next step, and then the next step. Right. And then, it's interesting because we don't see ourselves, we don't always see ourselves entirely as we are. We know how we want to be sometimes, but we don't always know if that's who we are. But I had an experience last week that was really interesting. I was out for lunch with some ladies having a meeting, and someone turned around and said, well, Marilyn, you're very compassionate, you're gentle, And in that moment, for the first time, I truly believed it. And I think that a lot of times I've been doing it and feeling it, but
yes.
There was always, but now I know it. And I think, and that was a very different thing to listen that deep, that down, where I can actually know it.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we do things, let me talk about myself. I do things and I feel good about what I'm doing and I want to do them, but there's the other side sometimes of, is this a benefit to me or somebody else? Sometimes I do the things that are benefit for me that still are nice for other people, right? It's like kind of like this thing going on, but I really got that I'm really nice in that moment.
Yes, and that's no small thing.
No,
right?
No, that was a huge thing because it was like, well, that's a core value.
Yes, to receive who you are.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
And to be able to really, really hear that pure thing.
Right. And it doesn't, I mean, people struggle with, well, is that conceit or am I being self-absorbed? I think especially women feel selfish, focusing on themselves or thinking well of themselves or, and again about the flower, the simple things, the simple truths. A flower does not apologize for itself. A flower gets wide open in its short, beautiful life. But I don't think a flower would argue with us that it wasn't gorgeous.
That's so interesting that you would say that because, the other day my husband and I were listening to this guy. I don't even know his name. I can't even tell you what his name, but he does something about sacred economy and about how it really should be and how connected we are and all this kind of stuff, and how everything like breath, like the air around us, is a gift that we should or could appreciate better. And when we appreciate those gifts, breath, the air, things like that, then we will stay in gratitude. We will stay in appreciation. And when you talk about a flower being a gift, I mean, we might have put the seed in the ground, but it's really a gift, right?
Right,
and if we're all connected, then we're all gifts.
Yes.
Yes. Like Rachel, you're certainly a gift.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
You're a gift, and I'm watching what's going on in the chat, and there's all kinds of lovely community type conversation going on in the chat, and I'm sitting here and I'm reveling in what I'm reading because everybody is so gifty to each other.
Oh, good. Right?
Right. So it helps us all dive in.
Yes. And can you imagine if everyone was totally, was diving into their lives? I just think it's, there's such a draw to be around someone who knows that about themselves. Just go ahead and be beautiful, and, beauty will flock to you. I mean, there's a magnetism about that when it's authentic.
Yeah, and I think we wait so long to be perfect.
Oh, we'll be waiting until we're dead.
Oh, God forbid. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, maybe being
we'll
dead
never be perfect.
No, but yeah. I mean,
right?
So what can you say about that? Because that's what holds people up is, waiting to cross every T and dotting every I, and for all the technology to be right and for everything to be right. And
yes.
So help us with that, Rachel.
Yeah, I'd love to say something about that. And I'm going to say my memory from my first page of my first book. All I did was listen, and not necessarily to try to sell that book, but more because I just think that it says a lot about that question. So the first quote in my All I Did Was Listen book is about a client saying, I think I don't want to have order everywhere. I like having some messiness inside. And then I wrote a reflection on that page about that issue of messiness inside. And I was thinking about how that when we wake up in the morning, we're pretty messy typically, right? Like messy hair, wrinkled skin. If we wear pajamas, they're crinkled up. I mean, just sort of groggy. But it's us messy and real. And it's us up from dreams. And in dreams, we're very honest, right? All the different things we chase and how we may fly and just the ways we do our stories in our dream life. But in our dreams, we don't try to censor anything. We are just simply where we are right then and there. And it's a gorgeous thing. And I think just being aware and not judging, like, oh, this is my story and that is my story, and oh, that's how I'm holding that. And if we can hold all that with a loving and compassionate heart, I think about being a little girl with a skinned knee or something, and not being good at everything. Maybe I'm good at writing poems, but it's harder for me to work out some potential science equation or something. And that's okay. It's like, but loving me just for who I am and in that very real place, like I'm able to do when I dream, that to hold ourselves that way is the kind of container that I think is helpful.
So are you saying that this is all a dream?
I suppose, right? Our waking one.
I mean, because how do you break free of the fear?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be messy.
It can be grippy fear.
Yes. So how do you I mean, what's a step people can take?
Yeah. Well, I think that whenever there's a message that's of fear, or, I mean, unless you're facing a lion in a wide open field, you might want to heed your fear, likely. But in most cases, I think that fearful messages and really negative ones, and all of those that leave us feeling a bit disturbed and shaken, what I have come to realize is that when I'm left with a belief that leaves me disturbed or shaken, that there is no way then that belief is true. Because what is really true comes with peace. So when I have a thought about myself or my life that is delivered with peace, then I know there's truth in it.
So is it the amount of fear that becomes unreal? In other words, being cautious is one thing.
Yeah.
But being
fearful.
Yeah. Just completely disabled by it is a different story.
Then I think if someone is disabled by something, it's probably there's probably a trigger happening. There's something from their past, an old voice or message, or there's probably something deeper that is getting triggered, that is creating that fear. Right. And so, when that's the case, sometimes it's helpful to have some supportive people in your life to talk that through, like what's getting stirred up that's old, so that you can work through that with love and compassion, and so that you can move on to all the amazing stuff that your life invites you into.
I would say that if it's something like, we're talking about diving in, we're talking about diving in. It's for somebody, it might be the fear of just leaving the house.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it may not be a small thing. I mean, that is not a small thing. Diving in is
a small thing.
It is not a small thing. Diving in is a chunk of thing.
Yeah,
and
it
so, you're talking about like this thing that it's a big thing, that's got you wrapped up. So it's not an easy task. So you want to, like Rachel said, have support around you, have people you can talk to, have somebody who can hold your hand, while you're diving in. So Rachel, in your life now, is there something in particular that, I know the water was a metaphor, but is there something in your life now that goes hand in hand with diving in? Is there something that you want to dive into?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, maybe for all of us, right? And I'm happy to respond and start to think about that. And like you said, if anyone also wants to join in the conversation and call in or anything, it would be so much fun for this to be a group conversation.
Yes, it would.
Um, right?
Yes, so let me give it to you. 919-518-9773 and computers, that's plural, 2K voice, no spaces. Connect with us. We'd love to hear what you're going to say and, open up the dialogue to diving in. So, Rachel, what do you think? What's your diving in?
Yeah, my diving in, it's a little bit of a balancing act because I'm also a mother of two who are 17 and 15. And so part of diving in for me, there's an extended part of my heart of caring for my sons. And so for me diving in is also being aware of what all are they needing from me, and in my busy life not wanting to lose that piece. So sometimes I even have to write it down to keep vigilant. What are the things, little and big, that I can be doing to continue to help opening things up for them as well. So there's that's super important to me. And as for myself, my biggest thing really with diving in is some kind of merger of staying really awake and active and engaged in my creative life, but also not just inward, but balancing that outward so that as imperfectly and messy as I'm able to do, to be extending that love out to people and trying to keep my focus joyful and energized. So some kind of back and forth between resting when I can, and then emerging out and offering loving words and encounter with people. And so continuing to stay vigilant about that. Diving in also in a super concrete way is I've got, a little bit of road tripping ahead of me to keep getting my book out there and doing so joyfully. But also I have two different books that are sort of a part one and part two in the next year that I want to have come out. And they will be a compilation of my individual prints so that someone could have the whole collection, and with a teeny bit of a storyline embedded into it. So that's around the bend too.
So diving in always has some kind of fear attached to it. Some kind of fear could be debilitating, or it can be just not debilitating, but still something that you avoid or you put off or you procrastinate.
Yeah, I think that it can, and it certainly has vulnerability written all over it, right? Mm-hmm. I just think about the process of even getting into water, and we often either are naked or we are changing clothes into something that is much more bare. And again, for me, with the pool imagery, there's this, you go through the locker room and change, and maybe even shower, and that before you get into the pool. So there is so much bareness about all of this experience in life, and that's part of being all in and honest. That really is me. And it really is you.
No, it is. And I was thinking, I've had so many experiences with water. I mean, I remember even as a kid, wanting to jump off of a bridge into like a little lake. And everybody was jumping off. And I knew the water was going to be cold. Yeah. And so I had to prepare myself. And I knew it was going to be cold. Mm-hmm. So I knew I needed to just kind of squeeze in and go.
Yeah,
kind of like go like this and just go
Embrace
for it.
Yourself.
Yes, and that has made it easier along the way, because every time you get in the water, it's a shock.
It is a shock every time.
Pretty much every time.
I think it would be fascinating. So even if people aren't calling in, to think about what are your most significant experiences you've had with water in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be an interesting journaling or at least reflection or conversation. And what have those experiences told you about your life? You know, what is the language about those experiences with water? What do you connect with about that? What scares you? What encourages you? Where do you hear your dreams and invitations to live your life in those experiences? How have you been holding back from making peace with what came from those? Where have you left off in those stories? And where do you want to pick back up?
That's wow. That's great. And I mean, I was going like, oh, here with all these things but I also was thinking, so what does water mean?
What does water mean?
What does water
can
mean?
Go ahead.
No, I'm asking you. What does water mean?
Oh, well, can I read? It's brief, a
Yes.
little intro in diving in, and
Yes.
I referenced that a little bit.
Okay, great.
So just within the first page or two, I have this one page. And the background of this, the book is very visual. So it's full of water photography and my drawings and then my handwritten words. But on this page, it's this piece of water, kind of almost like a message can come up in a bottle on shore. And it's something you might find standing at the shore. And it says this: "Why are you standing way over there?" asked the water. "I am watching you," I replied. The water rose up and made sure I heard what she had to say next. "I am not separate from you. I am your life. You are made up of water. You are brimming with movement that terrifies you and material that electrifies you. Now throw off your sandals and dive in. Drench yourself in all your stories. Meet yourself in the middle. Come alive. Swim, my dearest dear, swim." So water, for me, Marilyn, is what we're made up of. You know, there's some statistic, right, of what percentage of us
I think adults at 75%. You said, but somewhere around 75%.
Right, it's a big whopping amount, right?
Yeah.
And so in some ways, to say we're afraid of water, it's to say we're afraid of the very thing we're made up of.
Have you ever read the book or seen the book by the Hidden Messages in Water?
No.
I can't recall what his last name is. I think he's a Japanese researcher. And he was in the movie What the Bleep from years ago. Komodo, I can't recall what his name is. And he wrote this really fascinating book. I mean, he even put one out for children, Hidden Messages in Water, because water takes on, whatever, like if you play certain kinds of music, for instance, if you play heavy rock music, when it crystallizes, it's going to crystallize kind of just like, it will reflect the music. Mm-hmm. If you play some kind of Mozart or some kind of beautiful kind of sway kind of music, the water will crystallize very smooth and beautiful and all that kind of stuff. So it's how you feel. Mm-hmm. Water will take on that. Yes. It will crystallize to that.
Right.
That's how powerful water is.
Right.
Interesting book, Hidden Messages in Water. I interviewed him many years ago, and very interesting book. It's really something to take a look at on the studies, even in locations in different parts of the world, depending upon what is going on there culturally. The water, the waters, the land, the ocean, the rivers will take on what's going on in the environment around the culture. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes, indeed.
Water is powerful.
Right. It is powerful. As are we.
Yes. We're water. Mm-hmm. We're water. So I am also very curious and would love to have anybody call in and share what you're diving into. And I'm not what you want to dive into, but what you are diving into. I would love to hear that. And we are great support for that. I mean, there is always
Yes.
something I am diving into that I do put off some things, and I just wait till I get closer to the edge, I guess. You know,
Yes.
that again, that metaphor of getting to the edge. You know, you got to walk to the
Right.
edge, get to the edge, and then you jump in. Well, I'm getting to the
Yes.
edge of some things and getting ready to jump in.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'm
Indeed.
scared. I'm scared too. I'm scared, but
Right. Oh my gosh, Marilyn, I just finished. I'm going to share this online starting next Monday, but I just finished a little video. And it's just a little over a minute long. I mean, it's really tiny, but where I am standing at the edge of the pool, and there's, music going on in the background, and I dive in. And it shows me swimming for a little bit. But it is that. It's how many things do we stand at the edge in, and what does that conjure up to take that jump and then to be in the water? Um, it's it it's a big deal. Uh,
and we have a question
so
on here,
okay.
which I think is something we should talk about. And Karen's asking, what do you and I think about toxins in the tap water?
Hmm. What do we think
And in
about
our water
toxins in the
system,
tap water?
yes.
Right.
What do you think
So
about
there's
that?
a piece about can we trust the water? And also, um, it's difficult because we also rely on each other, we have each other's water, right? And so there's the desire to be in water that's pure and good for us. And sometimes we are hurt by other people. And it either stops us from taking in what we need, or we still take in what we need because we need it, but we're negatively affected by it. And so, I mean, so I'm just trying to hear also the deeper things, as well as I'm sure there's also a practical, just a downright practical issue about that too. But I'm
Yeah.
hearing both levels.
And I would also add to that, I'm an optimist.
Mm.
And certainly I'm not going to jump into water with a bunch of alligators or, deadly fish.
No.
And it may be the toxins in the water are just as bad. But I am also going to do my best to counter that and do something that would be good for myself to get rid of the toxins. So I don't have to give up the water. I mean, because then we can give up so many things. Because there can be bad things and negative things in a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And we have to be smart about what things, and how much we have to give up. I don't want to give up everything.
Right. I think I love how you put that. And I so tenderly approach this because I realize when people ask questions that I somewhere in me have the same questions in me.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just, whoever this Karen is, I tremble with you about this question, that there's tenderness in it. Even though, like a parallel I think about, back to those flowers, is I am allergic to bees. So I have a bee kit in case I get stung. And especially in the middle of the summer, sometimes I don't approach certain sort of flowering bushes or, filled with a lot of flowers because of the bees it attracts. And so, if I notice there's a lot of bees, I don't tend to go close.
Right.
But if there's one or none, but there's the vulnerability or possibility that one could arrive, I still approach the flowering area. And so it's that same thing. Like, I don't want to give that up. I don't want to give up water because of toxins necessarily. But yeah, that's part of the language of it all.
And I think it was a great question, Karen, a great statement, and I really appreciate it because those are the kinds of things you think about when you're diving in. But I also,
Right.
like I know that there are things that I want to dive into that could
Mm,
have their own toxins, and
right.
yet I have to dive in because they have the toxins. I mean, I think we're all out here and we're treading on some things that are not always very pleasant, but we have to
Right.
tread on them and we have to do something about them, or they
Right.
will they will encompass us. They will
Yes.
take over.
Right.
And I can't have that happen. I can't be
Right.
I have to be a part of the change.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
So,
Right. So there's practical parts about advocating for change and doing your part. Um, and in the meanwhile, I don't want to wait,
right.
So it's the both and, right? I mean,
Right.
I have this little bit of time here, and I don't mean to sound morose, but I will die. And so, um, I would myself, I would rather spend my life swimming a whole bunch of years and have a couple years knocked off the end of it
Right.
than because of the toxins than not having swam.
Right. And like Debbie said on the chat, homeopathy helps with these things. So she just wants you to know that. And
Oh,
with a lot of things. Um, the thing about diving in, many years ago, do you know the book Power versus Force?
no.
Um, Again, I'm at a loss for the author's name.
Okay.
So, but it's a great book. It's been, I mean, he's a physicist and he was amazing. And my husband and I went to see him many, many years ago. And Power versus Force, about good versus not good, words, all these things have energy and have power. And I remember watching his wife was on stage with him and she was drinking Tab,
Mm.
like diet soda. And I'm like, how in the world is she drinking Tab? I was blown away. So I kind of tucked it away because he's talking about power versus force, and how your logarithms and how you vibrate. So with that, there was a break. And, I went out to go to the bathroom and the women's line was like huge, as women's bathroom lines usually are. And the men's was very short, as they usually
Mm.
are. And he
As
comes,
they usually
as
are.
they usually are. And he was coming, Stephen, anyway, he was coming by me and he reeked of smoke, reeked of smoke. And
Okay.
this just did not compute. How is he reeking from smoke and his wife drinking Tab? And they're talking about power versus force. It just
Huh.
didn't. So we got back in there, and he said, he turned around, he was talking about something, and he said, it's the totality of the energy fields. So it's not one energy field that would kill us. It's not just
Mm.
the smoking of this. It's not smoking the cigarettes or drinking Tab. It is
Mm.
everything you do will kill you.
Mm.
So if you live, for the most part, a
Mhm.
joyful, great, happy, healthy kind of life, and then you
Mhm.
do something that is not healthy, happy, and joyful,
Mhm.
chances are you might not die. But if you
Uh-huh.
smoke cigarettes and you eat a lot of food with salt and you have a lot of stress in your life and you do this and you do that and you do this and you do that, chances are you're going to die because
Mm.
that's how and that made a lot of sense. It's the totality of how we're living. Yeah, it's
Mm.
cumulative, as Amnon just said. Good word,
Mm.
Amnon. So, um,
You're cumulative.
oh my God. So anyway, I forgot to even look at the time. I'm having
Okay.
such a good time.
Yes.
So tell everybody where to find you, where to find your book.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you can find my book at my online shop, which is my name, RachelAWES, at, or not at, rachelaz.etsy.com. So you can find my prints and books and mugs and all kinds of goodies there. And my general website is just rachelaz.com. So those would be the key places, but it's also available in other places as well.
And your artwork and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I also want to just mention, because people are so good on the chat, The book that I mentioned before, Hidden Messages in Water, is by Masaru Emoto.
Nice.
Yes, great book, and you should look for it. And also, there was something else here that I wanted to mention that somebody wrote about. Oh, and your work is on Etsy, right?
Uh-huh. Yes.
And what else? Let me see. There was something else I wanted to mention, but I can't find it in the moment. But it will be on our show notes. So there's something that went
Okay.
by in the chat that I missed, and I apologize if I have, but we will gather up all the notes, and it will be on the BreakingFreeShow.com blog under our show notes. So be sure to go look at that. If for some reason you can't connect with Rachel, just write her a note on our Breaking Free page, and she will get it for sure, on Facebook especially. And we just had such a great time today having you all here. Rachel, final words.
Oh, final words. Thank you for having me on, and thank you all for listening. And love to all of who you each are, and to all the water you carry within you, and to all the stories that that's carrying. And my just great hope for each of you is that you would hold the container of your life, of all of this water, of all you feel drawn to dive into, with such compassion and love and honesty. It's all really ultimately beautiful in there, and the world needs you. So
Yes,
that's how I'd want to close.
yes, that's perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that. And yes, the world needs all of us to be together. One of us alone ain't doing it. Two of us alone ain't doing it. All of us together, we got a shot. David Hawkins is the name of the author, Power versus Force. Thank you, Rachel, on our chat.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And if you want to get in touch with me, please feel free. Click above my head and email me anytime if you have any questions about anything. If you have a show idea, we'd love to hear from you. I am going to start doing Google Hangouts this week. They're going to be random. The name of my Google Hangout is Skywire. And it's just going to be random conversations about ahas. And so everybody can, share your ahas, and we're going to find the wisdom. And sometimes we don't have to find it. We just want to share it. And with that, Amnon, any final words from you?
No, how do they find out when you're live?
Oh, when I'm live on Hangouts? Oh, well, I got an event posted on my Google page, my Google Plus page, and they're going to be random. And I'm just going to do them whenever the moment. I'm not going to try to do them every day or at least a couple of times a week. So be on the lookout. Watch me, make friends of mine on Google, and we'll go from there. And, Rachel, yes. Invite me on Google Plus. I will, Rachel. I will. If you tell me what your how to find you on Google Plus, I will invite you on the chat. And with that, everyone, Rachel, Oz, we love you. You are awesome. We're glad to have you. We love having you. And everybody out there, thank you so much for being here, Rachel. Mwah. Everybody out there, mwah, mwah. I'm not. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Short for awesome?
Is Oz short for awesome? Amnon wants to know.
Sure.
Of course it is. Is it? No. Is it?
It is now.
It is now. We think she's awesome. We know she's awesome. She is. We love her.
Thank you. Your
Thank
awesomeness
you.
too.
And everybody
Thank
out
you.
there. Have a wonderful day,
Absolutely.
and we'll see you in the water. Dive in. Bye.
All right, diving in. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That vidblasterguy.com, carolinaapparel.com, and deltaforce.net.